Welcome to the video. We're going to be doing a 2-year and 5-day check-in with no nicotine. If you haven't seen my channel before, I quit nicotine 2 years and 5 days ago, and ever since then I haven't had nicotine and I haven't used nicotine, and the only exposure I have had to nicotine have led me to become even stronger and stronger, sticking to the absence of nicotine. So it's a 2-year and 5-day check-in, no nicotine. Welcome, like I said. So I did this 2 years and 5 days ago, and ever since then I've been able to stick to it ever since. And I guess I'm gonna go ahead and run down some things that I think people should know. Some people that are maybe looking forward to stopping their use of nicotine, and why would one want to do that? Why would one want to stop the use of nicotine? Well, we could sit here, we could have an hour-long, 2-hour-long conversation about, what those things may be, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a couple things like the way it makes you feel, the way it has effects on your mental, physical, emotional, and which is the way that you interact. And that way that you do interact, as we talk about on this channel a lot, is it has a spiritual process to it. There's a spiritual connection to these mental, physical, and emotional spaces and states of being. And these can be influenced by the use of substance. These can be influenced by your behavior. It can be influenced by. And so the things that you do on a constant basis build patterns, and the behaviors that you build towards these patterns have things going on in all these sections, mentally, physically, emotionally, and thus spiritually, going on all at once. So it's going to be a breakdown about, at the point of 2 years and 5 days with no nicotine, mentally, what can you expect? Well, you can expect to have the resistance to not want to cave into the cravings. Of course, that has been experienced for a large amount of time during this 2-year and 5-day journey, and that is not a recent facet of this. The resistance mentally to deny the cravings, you have to find other activities to, let's say, get that effect on your mental state of being, whether that you have to do something physically, whether you need to find some sort of balance, some sort of stability as far as, let's say, emotionally, with if you're dealing with something like that, or let's say you have to find some purpose as far as spiritually, and or do some work as far as spiritually, or whatever that may be, whatever that is to you, and whatever your spiritual state of being it means to you, it would be that. So do something like that to not necessarily need any of that substance to affect your mental state of being, to soothe your mental state of being. So that was a thing that really made everything easy. And along with let's talk about it all together, because sometimes it's not the most, let's say, clairvoyant way to go mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. When they all coexist with each other, we'll just talk about them all together. So when you take care of your body more, when it comes to physically, the diet, the foods that you eat, the actions that you do, are you living an active lifestyle, or are you living a more sedentary lifestyle? Basically, are you lounging around and not being too active? Because that's going to have a factor of your health. And to add on to that, if you're not being healthy as far as those choices that you make, how motivated or how disciplined you think you're actually going to be to stick to not letting the substance back in your body, even if it's just to take a break for a certain amount of time. You know, that's the whole goal here. If you haven't seen any of my videos long way back, I said, you know, the plan is to outmatch just as much time that I use the substance that I'm off the substance, and therefore that's how we could reach a form of balance. I was trying to find a sense of balance along this journey, and I found a sense of solace in the fact that I could reach balance, and that will allow me to go and make my decisions from that point on. And chances are, you know, you can do things to use your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual state in an advantageous way, to where maybe it takes, you know, maybe you use for 5 years, maybe it takes 4.5 years to where you've fully healed, no damage has been done except maybe, you know, what you might have signed up for in the agreements upon using that habit in the first place, but nothing exceeding that. And then you decide when you want to use that substance again. You're going to be more resistant to getting back in the addictive mindset. They say, oh, immediately you're going to be fixed right back on the substance. You're going to be buying it day to day and night to night, and you're going to be using that substance because, you know, once an addict, always an addict. That's a saying. But I believe that if you restore that balance, that it should ideally make it a choice or an option for you, and a more balanced choice or option than previously, when, you know, some people, they started and fell into an addictive cycle of addiction right off the bat. Some people, they tried to be as moderate as possible, and good for that. Maybe that's what you should strive for in order to not fall back into a repetitively addictive cycle when it comes to, you know, we're talking nicotine, but this is really all substances. So we open the space to a conversation of just all substances. Just that might be the key for you to go ahead and don't use this, heal from what you have done, because that way you can achieve and you can aspire to and respect towards a balance that is ever so present in life, that you can get involved with and in rhythm with, and find that sink in with that balance. And you'll find that balance without that substance. So don't think you need to be very dependable on the substance. Don't think you need to be all that strict about what so-called negative sides of quitting that you might think are there, because the lamp's glitching out. We can just do this in darkness. It's not that big of a deal, honestly. You know, we were all birthed out of darkness, so it's almost soothing. And so, you know, think about not getting into a rhythm of repetitively depending on that substance. And like I said, don't think about the negative consequences that there are to quitting, because there aren't any. You're just detaching from something that really you attach yourself to in the first place. So you will be returning to a space that you were in previously, and that should, in terms of my own personal journey, was a sense of comfort. I was returning to a certain physical space by not having the substance doing anything to my body that otherwise wouldn't have been happening had I been using a certain substance. I detached from that in terms of physically. Mentally, I detached from being dependent from the neurotropic effect that it can have on the mental state of being, or the, let's say, relaxation that it can have on the mental state of being, or let's say so-called very quick acting dopamine hit possibly resetting certain motivations or certain pathways in the mind, and whatever that may be, but finding substitutes to where there's things that are just like that can do this. I've got a cup of coffee right here, and it's like I'm just gonna go ahead and drink a coffee, and that's gonna go ahead and give me that energy. It might give me that that thing. So finding the substitutes for that thing is going to be good. And when detaching from a substance, detaching mentally from the substance just in general, and just forgetting about it until further events, until that time comes, right? If that time ever comes, it's up to you. Everyone's going to have a different experience, because there's all possibilities when it comes to the differences of what other people are dealing with versus other people are dealing with. And you detach from it emotionally by not being dependent. You don't tie your emotions into it, and you say, of all the times I've been fixated on this substance, whether that be because emotionally, whether that be because I was using it for whatever reason tied in with the emotional state of being, say, I'm going to take my revenge on the substance, and I'm going to detach from it as far as emotionally, and goes from this bad behavior for now, this something that is holding me back, this substance, this bad behavior, aka whatever you're dealing with that you want to go ahead and correct. And so emotionally, just find more emotional fulfillment with purpose. Find more emotional fulfillment with things that are going to benefit you, things that are going to help you in the rest of your life. When it comes to, let's say, spiritually, you can be very spiritual, and there's no reason to tie drug use or anything like that into spirituality, because anyone and all beings have a spirit, and that own individual spirit, they have their soul. So you cannot say that one is more spiritual than the other for using one substance over the next, or a certain amount of substance versus the next, because free will is something that exists, and that is a law and a mechanism in the world that we are a part of. But that spiritually, if you go ahead and abuse your physical, your mental, your emotional states of being so much that they end up slowing down and doling out your sense of spiritual purpose, sense of spiritual knowledge or wisdom, or any attachment, or any sort of inkling of spiritual prowess or presence that you want to find in your life, that can give you deeper meaning than just things that are in front of you, and things that are behind the veil, and things that are more within, things that are deeper. I want to hop in, and I want to dive deeper in, maybe later today, maybe when I get off work later. I will have to see. I want to talk, and I want to dive deeper into the mind, and I want to talk about certain things. Don't quote me on this, but I'm going to try and talk about how certain behaviors how certain continuous behaviors really manifest themselves out physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how the repetitive nature and the things that you're constantly doing are playing out, as far as how they present themselves and how they manifest in those states of beings, and how you can view them, and then therefore, once you're aware of them and viewing them, you can go ahead and work on them, and lock in, and go ahead and start putting in the work that needs to be put in order to reach the correct space to be on your path, well off along your path that you are going down. And so after 2 years and 5 days without nicotine, I think I'm going to make it quite quickly to the next 2-3 years that are going to be a couple more years of, for sure, not having any nicotine, and maybe further than that. There's no reason to subject oneself to any unfavorable position. So be wise about the things that you are doing, because when people fall into the repetitive natures of things, it's hard to get out of them. And make sure that this isn't affecting you in ways that you're not necessarily aware of. Always make sure to use the mind and to think about things deeper than what you can see, deeper than what you can feel, deeper than what you can taste, touch, and hear and smell, and try to get to the root of these occurrences, the root of these situations, these scenarios that we are going through. Peace for now.